28th, 2025 to order. This will be both a physical meeting and a virtual meeting. Some members of city staff or consultants may be participating via teleconference. Today's meeting may be viewed on YouTube, Facebook, and following the meeting on cable channel 10 HD 1090. Public comment is not normally taken at workshop meetings, although the council may allow or request public participation on action items. We have no action items on our agenda today. Welcome to everyone that is here with us today. And I'd like to take a few minutes to invite council members to provide any updates on the city's boards, commissions, or committees on which they serve. Councilmember Merrow, as the about knocked over Councilmember Marshall.
I've got good news that the negotiations with the labor union with regard to the transit operators or drivers is going very well, and we have a tentative agreement, but hashing out the final details. But by word of somebody on the inside, they were saying he hadn't seen anything like this go this smoothly, I don't know, in decades. That's all I have, Mayor Wright.
Great, thank you very much. Anybody else for the good of the order? Councilmember Stuckey.
So tomorrow, 3 o'clock is the LTAC meeting where we make our formal recommendations to council. 3. And then I went down to Island County, rattled the saber a little bit. Finally, we have gotten the preliminary interlocal to redo the Whidbey Camino Island tourism, and we're going over that with the government agencies in a meeting on the 14th of November. Hopefully it goes smoothly, and then can send it out to us and the county and Langley to vote, and Coopville.
Thank you, sir, for that. Appreciate that. Anybody else? Going once, going twice. Is Councilmember Wiggins with us? Yeah, I see him. Okay. All right, so we are going to move on then to our City Administrator Monthly Departmental Report, and here to talk about that is our City Administrator, Sabrina Combs.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Council. So you all have the report in your packet. I'm just going to go over a couple of items. Next slide, Tim. So one, Mayor and I attended with Councilmember Stuckey the Association of Washington Cities District 14 meeting luncheon. We were able to host that at the Yacht Club. So it was a very good meeting. We did learn a lot about the shorter session that's coming up, how we all need to be activated to participate. There are Friday calls that will happen from AWC to help us all stay updated on what's happening during the session. There's also the new elected officials essentials that's coming up for those folks that get elected and want to learn more about their role in government. And then finally, we have staff, as I've talked about, working on our 2026 legislative priorities. They will be bringing that here to council, but we did get AWC's list, and that is available on their website as well. And then next slide. For development services, we have a lot of changes going on in that department. So we did have our new inspector started on October 6th. His name is also Brian, so we understand that's confusing. We have Inspector Brian and we have Building Official Brian. We've joked that we're trying to come up with nicknames, but at times it may be confusing. So just so that you're aware, it's not you, it's just what happened when we hired the best candidate. And then we are doing interviews for an associate planner position since Nolan left. That's coming up next week. And we're doing our final reviews of applications and scheduling interviews for the director. And then we are in the process of transitioning to a full-time code compliance position, and Ray Heltzley will be retiring. So we are working on those transitions. Then we did want to highlight the police department's e-bike training. Some great action shots were taken. Of course, as always, our police department is doing their best to be prepared to serve our community. And then finally, we have our all-staff meeting that is this week, and so that is on October 30th from 11 to 1. We are shutting down facilities a little earlier than that so that staff can get to those events. So those are my updates. If you have any questions, let me know.
Great, thanks, Sabrina. Any questions for Sabrina from you all up here? Really? Okay. Can you add Mayor Pro Tem to work with us on doing the interviews for the director position that we're...
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, we are going to move on then to Development Services 2025 Comprehensive Plan Major Update Policy Review. And here to introduce this is our Principal Planner, Rajesh Kakmak.
Can you hear me? Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I have a request. At the very last minute, just before coming up here, I realized that my slideshow that slides that I prepared are not the accurate slideshow, and I couldn't find 2 or 3 slides that need to be in there to kind of get our climate resiliency conversation going. So I have a request to give me about 15-20 minutes to update these slides, and if you want to continue with the agenda, I will come back and be able to then present it. So thank you.
We'll move on then to the first legal item. We have a proposed ordinance number 2031 adopting the Departmental Municipal Code, Chapter 6.25, related to chronic nuisances. And here to introduce this topic. Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. I didn't realize that wasn't on. All right, so again, legal, first topic, proposed ordinance number 2031, adopting Oak Harbor Municipal Code, Chapter 6.25, related to chronic nuisances. Introducing this topic for us this afternoon is our City Attorney, Hillary Evans. Hillary, are you there? All right, well, guess what we're going to do then? We're going to jump past this one and we're going to go to Parks and Rec because I see Brian Smith over there. And we are going to have our Parks and Recreation Open Space Plan request for proposals. And here to introduce that is Brian Smith, our Parks Director.
If I could just, no. Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Council. So this is our Parks and Recreation Open Space Plan. This is a request for proposal for an update of the 2019 plan. I have a clicker. You want to go through this? Oh. It's all right. We adjust. All right. So the Parks and Recreation Open Space Master Plan will create a guiding document for future development and redevelopment of the community's systems of parks and green spaces, recreation programs over the next 6 years, helping us to support a prosperous community. This is often referred to as a PROS plan or PROS master plan. So it will encompass things like development regulations, guidance on placemaking, aesthetic look of the city, recreation amenities provided to the community, protection of conservation areas, green spaces, view vistas, and our waterfront, as well as connectivity and multimodal transportation and making our city less reliant on cars, as well as funding strategies to support these initiatives. Now, I was going to connect a lot of what we're going to say into the comp plan because, as you'll hear, there's a lot of connection between those plans, and the PROS plan is incorporated into the comp plan under Parks and Recreation. So you'll hear some parallels there in how they work together. Just in the overview, this plan creates a roadmap for ensuring just and fair quantity, proximity, and connections to quality parks and green spaces, recreation facilities, and programs throughout the community now and into the future. And once the PROS plan is completed, those recommendations will be added to future updates of the city's comp plan, which not only guide decision makers and give staff a clear roadmap of priorities to work on, but is often required for grant applications to fund the initiatives that come out of it. Our goal with the PROS plan is a community-sourced and system-wide approach in order to develop those goals and policies and guidelines that go into the city's comprehensive plan and prioritize strategies based on current and future funding scenarios. So because the new Parks and Recreation Department, now coming into its third year, this will be more of a new plan than an update, but we'll still draw on the goals and policies from previously adopted plans dating back to the originally drafted plan from 1989. Goals, policies, and projects from the PROS plan is included in the city's comprehensive plan, and budgeted to update the PROS plan in 2025 for inclusion into the comp plan major update. But we were delayed a bit with the urban forestry management plan and the recreation center feasibility funding agreements taking a year longer than expected to be signed by the administering agencies that funded both those plans. We'd like to fold these in as well as the completed art plan into the pros master plan, which then goes into the comprehensive plan. So the original intent was to have this completed this year for adding into the comp plan. But because some of those sub-plans were not completed, it got pushed back. We did go ahead and make updates to the comp plan in the Parks and Recreation sections, and I'll talk a little bit about what those looked like in a bit. The city's comprehensive plan previously included 41 guiding policies related to parks and recreation and the marina before the creation of the department. And that has now grown to 119 guiding policies, and that's before we've even gotten into the new pros plan update. So some of the things that are included with this, just for your information and background, it was last updated in 2019. It provides those goals, policies, and projects that then get implemented into the budget, which is our implementation document. It looks at levels of service, and I'll talk a little bit about what that means, recreation facilities and access, parkland acquisition, green space development, and then projects that go into the 6-year implementation plan, as well as fees, cost recovery, and funding strategies. So level of service. That is a method used to measure the amount of quality of a public service or facility that should be provided to meet communities' adopted goals for that service or facility. So in Parks and Recreation, a level of service standards are established to number and type and location of parks and facilities that are deemed necessary to adequately serve our residents. The level of service is expressed using spatially based approaches as well as racially based approaches. Spatially based approaches look at access and national standards such as a 10-minute walk to a green space, as well as things like ratios of facility capacity relative to demand by park facility and facility users, such as 4 acres of neighborhood park per 1,000 people, or 1 basketball court per 5,000 people, different things like that. We currently have about 26 maintained parks and 6 parklands, and those parklands includes things like open spaces, trails, some of those more undeveloped green spaces outside of traditionally maintained parks. The spatial approach in determining our level of service for parks is based on whether parks and recreation facilities are in proximity to its residents and whether all areas of the city have ease of access to recreational facilities and opportunities. It's expressed in terms of the area of population that a single park serves, such as 60% of the population or area within half a mile of a neighborhood park. The ratio-based approach in determining level of service is based on facility serving a certain number of people, population in the city. For neighborhood and community parks, the ratio is between acreage and population, so 1 acre per 1,000 people. For recreational facilities, it's a ratio between the number of facilities and the population, 1 sports field per 3,000 people. The ratio-based approach is quantitative in nature, and it determines service levels. It's different from the spatial approach because it determines if there is adequate quantity of facilities to service the population. The quality of our parks is, in the city, is determined by the maintenance level for each park. And maintenance levels are determined by budgetary allocation, staffing, personnel, and equipment. One methodology used in gauging maintenance levels is by determining the level of attention for, or LOA, as we refer to. The various components, such as turf care, pruning, et cetera, things like that, is given for a given park. So maintenance can be subjective without a proper measuring tool. And the level of attention system provides a way to convey the appropriate levels of care for a facility and help in decision-making and conservation of resources. So this table is like another example of our level of service table. And traditionally, the level of service has a rating of 1 to 5. We will update that with the latest national standards and also to our area and community specifically as we look at needs and assess our financial resources. Trails are similar to neighborhood parks in terms of service. They're intended to be in close proximity to the users so that they are accessible by foot or bicycle. Therefore, the service area for trails has been established as a half-mile area, which is similar to neighborhood park service areas. Currently, there's only one trail that meets the city's established standards for public trails, which is the waterfront trail from Scenic Heights down to the marina. The Freedom Park Trail system will be open this spring, and the city and county are working on connecting an island-spanning trail system as well. As far as recreational facilities, the ratio-based approach is a methodology to determine whether there are adequate recreational facilities serving the population. For example, the standard use for pickleball courts is 1 per 2,000 of the population. Therefore, a city with a population of 10,000 would need 5 pickleball courts to meet the desired standard. Oak Harbor would be double that. Most projects recommended by this plan are implemented by the 6-year capital improvement plan. The CIP is reviewed each year and updated to reflect necessary changes or additions to identify projects. These actions support further goals contained within the comprehensive plan goals. The projects are highlighted based on community interests, boards and council's discussions, survey data, and the level of service analysis. Projects proposed for implementation come back to council for appropriation within the city's budget, which is, as I said, our implementation plan. So this is the scope of the RFP for the pros plan update. Coordination with the city, facilitate the public process and a statistically valid survey, demographic trends, existing and future facilities, rank and prioritize demand and opportunities, develop a set of prioritized recommendations, analysis of programs and services, provide user fee analysis and philosophy, provide analysis and recommendation for partnerships, progress reporting, action plan, ground maintenance management plan, development of final plans, and supporting materials. So just to highlight just a few of these areas, robust community engagement. This is an area that we want to make sure is done correctly. Multiple engagement methods will be used for that, as well as statistically valid surveys by demographic. Technical analysis and data collection, full GIS-based inventory of parks, facilities, and trails, benchmarking against national standards, and integration of multiple existing city planning documents. Implementation action plan, prioritization of our projects and funding strategies, staffing recommendation, cost recovery, methodology, partnerships, budget analysis. So this goes beyond a high-level vision document and gives us good strategic action items. And then the final plan development will make sure it's actually interesting to read through, easy to understand. We want it to be succinct. We don't want it to be a long document that no one actually reads and just sits on a shelf. It has very clear goals, very clear implementation roadmaps, and can easily be incorporated into the city's comprehensive plan for decision makers to refer to as we look at development standards and things like that. And then we'll provide multiple presentations to advisory boards, committees, and city council before adoption. Now, we have gone and are going through a number of planning efforts. And we have seen a trend that plans have increased in cost. We had originally estimated our urban forestry management plan to come in about $75,000. That has been historically what I've done those plans at. And when we got proposals, they were $200,000 plus. So it was a bit of a sticker shock for us. So we were able to negotiate that down, but having seen that trend, I was curious. We set this budget level with the previous administration back in 2023. So I looked around to see where plans were coming in at with comparable cities, and these are some of the things that we saw. Kenmore, similar population, a little bit of a smaller park system. Their plan was about 120,000. Sammamish, a little larger park system and community of 172. Maple Valley, similar population. It did include an arts plan, so that was more at 231. Tukwila is currently doing one. They have an RFP out for it. They're estimating between 80 and 100,000 for theirs. So looking at that and just doing some calls around, trying to get as much information as possible, we're estimating without any real tweaking of the scope that the ranges we would possibly see would be somewhere between 100 and 165. So we had budgeted 80,000 in 2023. And there's several things that might that might affect that. We did verify that range with Barry Dunn, who's doing our Recreation Center feasibility study. Another contributing factor that might reduce that cost, though, is that some pretty big chunks of this plan have already been completed or are being completed by our current planning efforts. So the Urban Forestry Master Plan will already handle a lot of the parks maintenance side of things. The art plan will cover a lot of the placemaking areas. The Recreation Center feasibility study will cover a lot of the recreation facilities parts. So all these plans will be incorporated in and covers a lot of the scope that we want to do with this. That will affect some of the pricing. But if we do see proposals come in above what we had budgeted for, and we will post what our budget is and ask firms to give us a proposal based off that budget. But if they say, hey, that's really not doable enough to water it down enough to get within that, if we see that above that, we have a couple options. One is to negotiate the scope, which we do anyway with all of our proposals, and work that scope down within the 80,000 budget that we had established previously. We can take some of that work in-house. We can combine the project with current planning efforts like the feasibility study would make the most sense, or just hold off a little bit and increase the appropriation to what we're seeing or estimating the plan might come in at. Just to go over some of the points with each of those options, negotiating the scope, that would possibly reduce the scope element task to fit within that allocated budget. That may not cover all the desired scope goals. If it's too much of a need to be cut, really kind of depends on what is given to us in the proposals. It might require in-house tasks and additional staff hours. And then, like I said, all agreements already go through this anyway, so we'll negotiate as best we can. In-house work to make sure that we stay within that appropriate budget. We can reduce the contractor scope and take on those tasks in-house. A lot of those things have already been done in current planning efforts, and then we can make up some of that with things like engagement, resource and data collection, action plan deliverables, cost recovery modeling we can work with finance on. So that it does add significant workload to staff, but and we might not get as full of a market analysis, and we lose a little bit of that third-party unbiased approach. But there is quite a bit of cost savings there, and also some attractive options for doing that. Combining the projects, so we just approved a rec center feasibility study. If we were to combine projects with that plan, which will cover a lot of what the pros plan deliverables would include, we could see a cost savings of possibly about 30% of those costs. It streamlines the community engagement, so it reduces some redundancy there, helping prevent resident fatigue from taking surveys, accelerates that timeline by a few months, and then having one firm lead both provides a good compatible approach and recommendations that fit well together, which we would combine those into the pros plan anyway. And then a final option is simply just wait and then appropriate to estimated levels. Because we were not able to finish this within 2025, waiting on those other plans, we're having to update the comp plan outside of it anyway. So we would just, when we get to the 2027, 2028 budget, that gives us a little more time to finish up some of these plans, allows us to be able to incorporate that in, take a little more time with it, and then we would update the city's comprehensive plan in the future once that's all completed. Now, we don't know what we'll get proposals at. That's just looking at what we're seeing in the marketplace. Like I said, we have some strategies for how to make sure that that comes into the budget we had set previously. Our recommendation is to go ahead and put out the RFP and then evaluate the proposals. And then we can look at some of those options and strategies once we have a better idea of where they're coming in at. We might be pleasantly surprised that firms do match the scope to our budget, and then we don't have to worry about that. And the timing of the plans work well together. As a new department, we're doing a lot of planning efforts, but it's not a shotgun approach. We are doing these plans in succession for a reason. We did the Marina Business Plan in 2023, the Arts Plan completed last spring, the Urban Forestry Management Plan will complete this spring, the Rec Center feasibility study will be done by next fall, and then the Pros Master Plan will take all those and incorporate it in. And if we were to get this out in timely fashion, that would be completed, I would estimate, probably about spring or summer of 2027. And then we can incorporate that into the next budget cycle for recommended projects in the comp plan. So we put out the RFP, let's see what we get back, and then we can come back to council with recommendations on how to proceed at that point. We have ample time for discussion and good decisions. There's no rush on this. The planning process, just an overview, starting with the city council workshop, we have, we'll confirm the subcommittee or steering committee that will review the proposals, and then we will interview those firms. The commission will help with public meetings, and we'll provide those updates, and then bring that back to have check-ins with council, and then bring it back for adoption. So any questions or comments? Any thoughts that you have, particularly around the timing and some of those options I talked about with consideration of the budget?
Council. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I support the recommendation to put out the RFP and see what we get. I appreciate the options presented in terms of maybe, combining some of these efforts, but I also appreciate the fact that we're going to be using the data from the feasibility study and for the rec center and the comp plan and all that as part of the pros plan. So I can see the potential to really muddy the waters here by trying to glom everything into one category. And so I'm trying really hard in my mind to no, these are totally separate projects between the waterfront redevelopment and the rec center and the comp plan and the parks and the, so I think that, obviously we would like all the information right now so we can move forward, but I think that the recommendation of putting out the RFP, see what we get, we might, it may end up being something that we're going to need to tweak or combine or something, but like you said, we might be pleasantly surprised with something that comes back. So I don't think it hurts to do that moving forward. And I just, my request to you is to help me from trying to glom all these together and combine them. So just if you can help assist me in making sure that I'm keeping all of this stuff separate in my head, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Stuckey.
I'm not sold. So let's help me get there. I'll be honest, was not aware of a prior pros plan. We could do a lot of plans. And so I did some looking into the old plan. Looking at it, I mean, it almost feels like if you took that same plan and presented it today, 6 years later, I don't see a whole lot of difference. Our population hasn't changed substantially. Other than Freedom Park, we haven't added a bunch more I'm concerned with, is this something we really need? I mean, I understand getting it for the grant opportunities. That I understand. Is this old one not eligible for any grants because of the date? The old pros plan, can that be used? You mentioned grants.
Oh, I got you.
Can it still be used?
That's a good question. I have to ask Wendy if and Kat could probably speak to this a little more because the old plan went from 2019 through 2024. And we already know that we have several items that are out of date in our latest updates of the comp plan. Like I said, that went from 41 priorities. Some of those were removed entirely. Many of them were changed, and then that expanded to 119. So with the new department, we're doing several different things with improvements and moving initiatives forward that previously had not been done before, that we want to make sure we have a good roadmap for, so that we are able to prioritize and implement in a fiscally responsible way how we're moving some of these services onward. I don't know, you want to speak to that, Kat?
Yeah, I can speak to just the years, and I think most of that reference is made to the RCO. RCO is one of the main channels, the state Recreation and Conservation Office, I think, that has grants for parks and recreational facilities, and they would like your plan to be no older than 6 years since adoption. So that is the main. There's no. I don't think there's any state law that says that your plan is only valid for this long, but because they are the primary organization that a lot of grant dollars depend on, a lot of communities will try to keep their plans updated to try and be eligible for those grants.
Okay, that helped. And like I said, I respect it from a grants perspective, but when I look at that, go back to that older plan, do we really need to spend the money on a new plan that maybe, and maybe I'm wrong, substantially the same? I'm sure there's little differences, but I mean, we have a new Parks and Rec director who are looking through things with new eyes. We have our Parks and Rec Commission. We have surveys that we already put out. I'm just trying to see the $100,000 or $160,000 worth of value with the new plan compared to the old one. I guess I'm just struggling with that. And maybe that could be through the RFP process. As Council Member Heisen said, doesn't cost us anything to put the RFP out other than some time. But I am struggling with seeing substantial differences. I mean, we already have the parks categorized, things like that. It's not like our population has changed drastically since then. I mean, 1,000, 2,000 maybe. But I'm just struggling with the differences between this plan and the one in 2019.
So just to add more context, I did get a text here from Wendy that says, current plan is needed for RCO grants especially, so.
Okay, and again, I do understand it from that perspective. Had there not been the grant piece, this would be a pretty tough one for me to swallow.
Yeah,
So,
I just wanted to give you that perspective. Yeah.
Last question, funding. Is this coming out of, how's it being funded? Is it just the,
Yeah, so we have already budgeted the 80,000. I believe that was out of
David's got an
funding.
answer.
David, correct me if I'm
Yeah,
wrong
the
there.
funding is just out of the, general fund. So it's been budgeted in the 2025-26 biennial budget. So we have $80,000 in there that was set aside for this.
okay, I didn't know if any of it was from the forestry grant or anything like that, so
No,
that was my question.
Not from the forestry grant. no.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Marshall?
Thank you, Mayor. And to help support the Brian, it also, if I understand, is analyzing the programs and services that you've implemented over the last couple of years and doing cost recovery. And so there's a couple of things that you've added that are not necessarily, just inventory related, but, and analyzing the programs that you've implemented and kind of future needs. I too am in favor of just going out for the RFP. I personally would prefer to see us kind of, you touched on it at the very end there, where you've done kind of these studies in order and getting them all done. I preferred, or am hesitant to have too many going at one time. Certainly am not in favor of adding it to the feasibility study for the rec center. I want to keep that as clean as possible and not muddy the waters. But I like the idea of kind of implementing this in the fall. At that point, I believe you said urban forestry will be completed, the rec center study should be done at that point, and then it kind of rolls. He takes all that information and rolls it into this plan here. And so I support going out for an RFP and then kind of looking at that fall timeframe for implementation. So thank you.
So for clarification, you're saying next fall implementation?
Correct. Once we
Okay.
get some of these other studies
Yeah.
done,
Okay.
I believe that was the timeline that Brian had presented, was by next fall, we should have these other studies done. And
Perfect, okay. Councilmember Romero?
I appreciate very much the advanced planning, having been burned in the past with regard to contractors and plans. I just urge caution with regard to what they're delivering, because, of course, contractors are in the business of making money, and wherever they can cut costs, they will do it. So I would just, so I do favor an RFP, but the idea of just copy and paste from past projects and past analysis is not a good way to do it. So as long as there's kind of a policing of what we're getting so that we don't end up with just a non-actionable boilerplate results, then I'm in favor of it. Of course, with regard to the present planning, we're dealing with exceptional inflation, as Steve Schuler, our director, has pointed out about linear footage of water lines and all these other things is exceptionally expensive, so we need to be mindful of that too. Let's see. Oh, and I wanted to speak to the engagement piece. Surveys are notoriously difficult to get solid information because of the level of enthusiasm or interest or even knowledge of the people that are involved. So as we're going forward with regard to trying to get a sense of what the public wants and needs and so forth, I just encourage a wide range of avenues to get the opinions, because it's exceptionally difficult to get a realistic perspective on the level of enthusiasm. I mean, all we have to do is think about the pickleball and the basketball. I mean, we get them coming here and they go back and forth, but that doesn't really address perhaps tennis or other issues. So I'm just describing that with regard to any kind of surveys. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else for the good of the order? Nothing else? All right. Thank you very much, Brian, for your presentation. We're going to fall back to the Development Services presentation and the 2025 Comprehensive Plan Major Update Policy Review. And here to introduce that again is our Principal Planner, Rajesh Kakkamak.
Good afternoon, Mayor. Thank you. Members of the City Council, Kakkamak, Principal Planner, Development Services. So I think the City Council is familiar that we're updating our comprehensive plan, and at the last workshop, we discussed some of the elements, the policies of some of the elements. We discussed the urban design element, transportation, utilities, environmental and capital facilities. We're going through and discussing some of the other elements with the City Council this month, and also hopefully in November and December as well, because some of the bigger sections for discussion are coming up, like land use and housing and UGA and so on. So these are just the a very high level policy discussion, and this is at the very preliminary stages of our update. So we're looking at our existing policies, and as you all know, that we're also looking into doing an EIS for the comprehensive plan, and I will come back at a future workshop and talk about the EIS very specifically and what it does for our comprehensive plan moving forward. And the EIS and its impacts can have some influence on our policies. So we'll have a second round of review. So this review is going to help set the foundation. It'll set you up with the knowledge that you need, and as we go in discussing these changes. So we'll have this continuous discussion of the changes throughout the update process, and hopefully that'll keep you updated on all that is going on with the comprehensive plan. So that is just an overview of where we are with our planning process. And we were at the Planning Commission earlier this month. We had a very nice discussion. I would recommend, if you had a chance to look at these at our recording. It's hard to summarize all the comments and thoughts that the Planning Commission brought up, but it was a good discussion, and so we're getting good input throughout our planning process. I'd like to keep my presentation short and open up the floor for discussion and questions from City Council. I think I have a slide here just to kind of go over the format of the policies that are in your packet. It's in a spreadsheet form, has about 4 columns. The left column has the goal, the page number in which the existing comprehensive plan is, and they also have a theme subheading which the consultant added just to kind of flavor each policy, just in case we wanted to reformat or recategorize our policies to look at everything trails related or everything environment related, because we have different policies and different elements. They've coded them so that we could do some of that work. So that's what you see in the left column. And then you have the existing policy language, the proposed policy revisions, and then you also have some reasoning notes for that. So the way we went through and reviewed all of these policies, and I had the benefit here at this workshop of having a lot of representatives who reviewed the policies in your packet this afternoon. So if you have any questions and comments, please bring them up, because they're here to address them directly instead of me trying to address them separately. So Parks, Recreation, and Open Space, you had just a discussion on this in the plan update. Brian's department took a good look at this. They did a great job looking at almost the entire comp plan and had good suggestions on all the policy revisions. So if you have any questions, Brian is here to provide you with that information. They've added the new policies related to the arts plan that was recently adopted, that was not there in the previous. There's some clarification on some of the language in the plan, and then taking out any references to any outdated or amended plans. So that's kind of just the gist of some of the policy revisions in the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space element. You got an understanding of how this piece connects with what Brian is trying to do with the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space plan, and then you can see how the tree branches off into the urban forestry plan and other plans. So the comp plan, this is a good example of how the comp plan just kind of houses some of the kind of the crux of most of these major elements, and that's how we kind of compare elements to see consistency. And so that's what we try to achieve with this comprehensive plan. So anyway, so these policies, these are just the existing policies that will be amended, and whenever the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space plan is updated, and if there are new policies updated that come out of that process, we'll update this one as part of an amendment process. So that's kind of how that works. Economic development, we have an element on economic development. We had our finance department and government and our city manager's office take a look at this. There are policies added, again, there are some requirements from the state level in terms of making sure that there's land use compatibility when we make these decisions for economic developments. Changing to keep and monitor changing conditions, to track employment capacity. These are some new policies that are coming to jurisdictions to try and monitor some of the economic data. Reducing barriers to development. Investing in the marina. So there's been some policies added to make sure that that is a key element in part of our discussion. And then also here as well, removing references to outdated or amended plans. Government services, this is where our fire department, police department policies are housed, and both our police chief and fire chief had a chance to look at that and offered some clarity on markers and some more relevant data that they use to provide service. So some of that is provided to kind of just update our policies on that. And then we have a climate resiliency element. This is a new element that's going to be added to our comprehensive plan. This is based on a grant and a requirement of the state, House Bill 1181. And we received a $150,000 grant, and the consultants have sub-consultants that are working on this aspect of our plan. And they have I have provided the documents in the packet about some of the assessments that they have done, some of the analysis related to the gaps that we need to fill. And this assessment identifies some of the hazards that potentially Oak Harbor should kind of anticipate or plan for in the future. So there is a statewide level data tool that all the communities use in order to do this assessment tool, and this is a very kind of a technical tool that's applied to all communities and yields different results based on your location. So that tool identified 3 main hazards that is applicable to Oak Harbor, and that's the sea level rise, the extreme precipitation, and flooding. Those are the 3 that, at least from the data analysis. Part of this assessment requires that you also have community input. And so in our first survey that went out, there was a question or 2 on climate, and we also had meetings with our OAKPAC steering committee that involves other agencies and people in the community. And we took input from these groups as well in terms of, and staff. Staff also had an input in this assessment. And some of the hazards that were identified through the community input process were wildfires and smoke. That seems to be something that the tool did not identify. However, people do feel that that's something that they've experienced. And then, the extreme heat and drought, which came mainly from WashDOT, because they were just relating it to the transportation network and what it does to the pavement when we go through these summers without any rain and the heat that is being experienced. So those were other hazards that were identified just by community input. So these are some of the things that the process has identified. So the documents in your packet also include how the climate resiliency review and policies could be incorporated into existing policies and existing elements. So the consultants are reviewing that and suggesting policies for that. There are also new policies and other elements that are being recommended. And then there will be this element in the comprehensive plan that has policies as well. And I'll just quickly go through the kind of the 6 areas of policy consideration for this element at this point. Basically, these policies will address overall resilience, and then also equity with resilience, just to make sure that all aspects and all areas of the community are being considered in terms of trying to be more resilient. Sea level rise, and this is an interesting discussion. The OAKPAC had a really good discussion on it. I recommend looking at the transcript from that one. A lot of good comments that came out of that. So this is like there's a 2050 prediction, and then there's a 2100 kind of extrapolation of data to see what is the potential impacts. The impacts can range from a certain height to certain height. I think for Oak Harbor it's like 3 feet to 8 feet, depending on what conditions happen. And the community gets to actually choose at some point to determine the strategies on how they want to address it and what they want to address. And it can change from community to community. And because different communities have different assets along their waterfront, and so they can adopt different strategies to tackle them. And those were some of the good discussions that they had at the OAKPAC steering committee. Extreme precipitation, have some policies for that. Water resources was another asset that was identified for specific policies because our water supply comes from Anacortes, and so that is the lifeline for Oak Harbor, our growth, etc. And that was identified as an important asset, and policies developed to make sure that we protect that in the long run. And also, because of the community input on identification with the wildfire, there are some policies that are recommended for that as well. So these are just all the new draft policies. And so this is, again, like I said, at the very draft stage, we're taking comments, discussions. So with that, I will turn it back over to the council for questions, comments, thoughts.
All right, council, here's your chance. Councilmember Merrill.
With regard to the sea level rise, I don't think there's any real dispute about this actually happening. I did want to make mention of the fact, again, that I spoke with an engineer who had visited on this subject with a geologist, and the land is rising to an extent according to this assessment, but of course it's a tectonic speed, whereas the sea level rise is much more rapid. And in any event, I just wanted to keep in mind with regard to the seismic question, I understand that that's not a primary focus, and a major seismic event would be sort of a black swan event that is an unusual, or strikingly unusual, whereas the sea level rise is an ongoing matter. So I would encourage that at least that be thought of, because even if we have shakers and stuff, just shakers over time, it can destabilize foundations and affect building structures and so forth. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else for the good of the order? Yes, Councilmember Stuckey.
It's a little elaboration on a couple of these. Review existing police station locations and plan to mitigate potential impacts from climate exacerbated hazards. Is that thought process of building a new police station and the effect it could have on the environment, or could go a little more into that? That'd be great.
So I'll just speak from my end, and then the chief can speak. So I think from the tool that was used from the technical state level common tool that we have to use in order to get this assessment, I think it identifies all of your emergency facilities as just being something that you want to look at under this light. And so because we don't have the resources to do that analysis right now, we're just kind of grabbing that as a way to say, let's take this from the tool and put it into our policies, because we should look at these as and make sure that they are located in appropriate places in order to be able to support during these long-term, protect them from these long-term impacts.
Anything to add, Chief?
I'll just add that our building was built in the 1950s, and it's 75 years old, and yeah, I think that if a conversation needs to be started at some point, so this is a good time to start that conversation.
Okay. I mean, I understand what it is, but if someone could elaborate a little bit more on seafood and marine tourism. Is the thought putting that in there to just increase awareness of the marina and the tourism it could bring? I mean, the local fish and wildlife? It's under tourism. It is, let me pull it up here. Page, well, it's 63 in our packet, which doesn't help too much, but it's Ensure tourism, the old policy was ensure tourism with an emphasis on strengthening Oak Harbor as a tourist destination, which now would read, ensure tourism with an emphasis on strengthening Oak Harbor as a tourist destination, including seafood and marine tourism.
Yeah, so that is a component that we've been working on related to the marina. There have been conversations about one of the ways of impacting and growing, both working with our tribal organizations and other local fisheries, is that they would have those programs. So we're just looking at that when we're looking at different grant opportunities related to the future of the marina. So does that answer your question?
I mean, there's no reason to take it out. It just sounds like one of those flowery languages that were just thrown in there, to be honest. I mean, it doesn't hurt anything by having it in there. I'm just curious if there's some emphasis behind it.
It's just the emphasis of when we talked about doing a future port, some of the infrastructure that you build with that is different economic value opportunities like fishing, processing fish, storing, working with those organizations and that type of thing.
Okay.
Councilmember Stuckey, I can speak to that a little bit as well.
Please.
So, like, I'll give you an example. In one of the port development grants that we applied for, some of those fundings are for a lift to help commercial fishermen and crabbers pull their goods out of the water and transport those. We had a very successful summer, especially with commercial fishing, which has been light with Oak Harbor. We're only able to take in so much compared to, more major commercial ports like Anacortes, but we do still have active commercial fishing, and they're very successful this year. And those are some of the infrastructure improvements that they would like to see happen. We've had quite a few discussions with commercial fishing groups as we've gone through all the marina improvement discussions with the community. So looking at that, how we increase that, and then also market it as a hub is one of the things incorporated within the marina business plan.
Is fishing off the marina still not allowed?
It is allowed within certain windows, and that's all governed by Fish and Wildlife.
Okay, I remember having a conversation, I even have the emails from the previous harbor master which said fishing wasn't allowed off the marina, but I guess that might have been.
Yeah, we do a kids fishing derby, each year and different activities, but you have to do it only within specific windows.
Okay. It might be nice to have more information about fishing on our website, where you can, where you can't, things like that.
I will have Maggie work with Elise on that.
Yeah. That's all the questions I have regarding this update for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Stuckey. Anybody else? Councilmember Romero?
And just a brief comment, because you brought up commercial fishing. With regard to the marina, anything, and this is just my opinion, but anything that can create profitable commerce in a constructive way, besides all the recreational activities with regard to the marina, I would be in favor of that as a general rule. So normally, if you have a certain component that is actually generating revenue, generating profit and so forth, and you're seeing it grow, then that might be something to beat in on and expand. But of course, always within reasonable limits. But the main thing is, when you see a good thing going with regard, like I say, a good fishing season, and you say, well, could we not develop this even more for the good of the city, then I would favor it.
It also doesn't just apply to commercial fishing, but also tourism travel. For instance, we've had more seaplanes landing in the harbor than we have in years. We used to have an agreement with Kenmore Air for that. We actually removed the seaplane dock several years ago when we did an update to the marina, but that's something that now we're looking at. All right, should we include that in future improvements? We just had one yesterday that came in.
Excellent.
Anybody else? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Not a question, just a quick comment. Thank you for the amount of information that was included here. This is fascinating. I'm specifically looking at page 83 of our packet, where there's a matrix of community assets, water areas, police station, fire station, grocery stores, educational institutions, and then like a danger rating based on the climate hazards. And it's visually, it's really neat to have a a way to just be able to visualize, the community assets. And then, okay, so, if scenario X, Y, and Z happens, where are the priorities? What are the danger zones? It's really helpful to have all this. Anyway, just thank you. I know that you guys, you put in all this information into our packets, not knowing if we're gonna, read it or use it or appreciate it, but we do, very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Anybody else? All right, well, thank you very much, CAC. I think Hillary has all of her kinks worked out. We're going to move into the legal topic and proposed ordinance number 2031, adopting Oak Harbor Municipal Code, Chapter 6.25, related to chronic nuisance. And here with us is our city attorney, Hillary Evans.
Is it, oh no, is it working?
Yes.
Yes, you're working.
Can you see me though?
We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Oh Lord, I'm so sorry. We upgraded to a cloud. I don't know why this isn't working. I will just start talking because
All right.
I don't want to waste anybody's time more than I already have. So good evening or afternoon, council. We're here to talk about chronic nuisances today. As you have seen in your materials, a really good opportunity to resolve areas or buildings or establishments or neighborhoods that have repetitive law violations is a chronic nuisance ordinance. And what we've proposed to you today is such an ordinance that would identify properties that have had, for instance, 3 law violations in 90 days or several law violations in the course of a year. So we're talking about repetitive violations of things like drugs, abuse, assaults, warrants, not what you'd think of typically as a nuisance, like a junk vehicle or a pile of garbage, but actual violations of the law. And it allows the police department to identify those properties and to issue them a warning. And then if the warning is not heeded, if there's no voluntary abatement that occurs, for the city to then file a civil action to seek numerous remedies, including up to and including closing the property. My law firm has represented several cities with similar ordinances in cases such as, drug houses or quote unquote hookah lounges, massage parlors, everything from residential to commercial, where there are, stemming from that property, really identifiable legal issues. So it's a really good tool in the toolbox when you're looking to abate criminal activity in an area, and you can pinpoint it to one specific property. And it's an opportunity to, you're certainly able to revise the language or tweak it. What I've pulled for you here and what we've drafted for you here is a sample ordinance that is very, very similar to the one used in Burien and Mount Lake Terrace. And I've actually litigated it in both of those cities, and we've had great success in working with property owners and with, using it in the courts to enforce. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm assuming there will be several, and I'll try and work on my camera in the meantime.
Thank you, Hillary. How about council? Do you have any questions or comments for Hillary at this time? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. If the definition of nuisance is someone who is already breaking the law or doing something unlawful, then I guess explain it to me like I'm 5. If someone's already breaking the law, then that's against the law, so that can be enforced. So what is the benefit of the chronic nuisance on top of the existing law, I guess is if that question makes sense.
Absolutely, great question. And I'll explain it to you like you're 15. Basically, when you have a property, like let's take a drug house, for example, you're getting a lot of warrants for failure to appear at court for people living in that house. You're getting a couple of abuse calls every once in a while. And these are all different people coming in and out of the property. Similarly with like a hookah lounge, you're getting prostitution arrests, you're getting drug arrests, and it's different people coming in and out of the property. You can specify like, hey, look, all this behavior is coming out of 123 First Avenue. And that seems to be a hub for all of this criminal behavior. And you can address the property and the property owner rather than the people who are getting arrested, because people will get arrested, right? If police are there on the scene, they'll pick up the person who's engaging in sex work, or they'll pick up, the person dealing the drugs, or whatever it happens to be that is the law violation. But the property itself can't really be addressed without something like this. So it'll focus on the property owner, and the first attempt is to notify the property owner, because oftentimes these are commercial businesses or residential properties that have been leased to someone else. So the legal owner of the property may or may not know how severe the problem is at this point. So you contact the legal owner of the property, you say, hey, look, there have been X many of law violations arising on your property. Are you aware of this? And try and work with that person to rectify the problem. And that can come in many terms, right? Like maybe it's an eviction of their tenant, or maybe it's enforcing their lease, or, erecting a fence or security lights or whatever it happens to be. But it's a tool to address the property rather than the people, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Hillary. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Anybody else? Yes, Councilmember Stuckey.
These might be questions more for the chief, but in your experience, how many properties would this apply to? I mean, is this huge where it's like, wow, this is dozens of properties, or is this like, it's just one or two a year
Yeah.
on average?
Yeah, thank you. So I would say that just over my 22 plus years, I can think of probably 5 different properties this would have applied to. I think that specifically, like Hillary explained, if you were talking about a residence or a location that was doing some drug trafficking, currently we leverage the health department to work on that, closing that property down. We really don't have any teeth in, as the city, in closing that property down. And so if the health department either didn't want to do that, then we would have a challenge with how would we shut that property down? So I think this gives us another tool, but I don't see it as, I don't think it's going to be a lot of properties in our community. I think that often you're going to hopefully gain compliance with property owners. That would be the goal.
Is there a chance, especially when we're talking about commercial, let's take Walmart. Let's assume Walmart was the building owner. I understand the argument that sometimes the building owner doesn't know, but let's assume it's a larger business where the building is also owned by the tenant. Are they going to be less likely to call if there's an issue, knowing that that could be a strike against them?
Yeah, I don't. Hillary,
I'll
please.
answer.
Yeah.
Typically, we don't see that being the case. And typically, the people inside the commercial property are not the ones reporting it, it's the neighbors. So very rarely is it a large commercial establishment that is calling itself out. Usually it's, you have a strip mall and one of the businesses is running some sort of nefarious business, and the neighbors are just sick of the arrests happening in the parking lot. And all the people who are getting arrested seem to come out of the same door. So I'm not sure if it would be a deterrent to business owners calling police for help. I've never encountered that, but it's possible. It's possible.
Sure. And yeah, I mean, I understand that, but obviously looking at what's possible is also part of making new legislation. So, but it's nice to hear that's a rarity. When it sounds like through the process, they would then work with the police chief on a plan to stop this from happening in the future. How much discretion does the police chief have in that conversation?
Under the current code that I'm proposing, extensive, the idea being that, I've dealt with it was a motel in one of my jurisdictions that had chronic law violations. And they proposed lights and fencing, and the police chief said, what you really need to do is stop accepting cash because it's a cash only business, and that's part of what's encouraging the criminal behavior. And so they worked together to come up with a solution that was somewhere in the middle of those two things. But ultimately, it's supposed to be a cooperative and voluntary agreement to abate the property. And generally, a city will not move forward with any sort of court case or, prosecute under this statute or this ordinance if there's been cooperation and a good faith attempt to abate the issue. Because, you can do everything, but in some cities, on some blocks, you cannot abate all criminal activity no matter how hard you try. And so this is really just a carrot and stick for the city to incentivize the property owners to do what they can do to reduce crime in their area.
What if it comes down to a financial issue? Let's say the recommendation is to build a fence, and that business just doesn't have the money to build the fence, yet that's what's being recommended by the police chief. How do we negotiate things like that?
Yeah, that ultimately falls at the discretion of your police chief and your mayor, and in a way me, because if the case is recommended to me to file a court case to try and get compliance, I'd have to ask the court to make that judgment ultimately. So whether or not I file that lawsuit is somewhat in my discretion and somewhat in the mayor's and somewhat in the police chief's, and we'd probably work collaboratively to identify properties where there are stumbling blocks like that. It certainly always is the first thing I think of when I get one of these cases is a judge even going to do this? Is a judge going to look at the city and say, city, you're being unreasonable? They're not going to have to install, $400,000 worth of floodlights and fencing. That's not a reasonable ask. So, and I don't want to go into a court with a losing battle. So I think there is discretion on the city's side to make a reasonable requirement. And I can't really think of a city or an instance where the city's requirements have been unreasonable or cost prohibitive.
What have the most common requirements look like?
For hotel, motel, it's security, increased, and whatever that means. I'm certainly not a security expert, but the police can make recommendations, including, having armed security guards on premises during evening hours, better lighting, surveillance videos, trying to limit or disincentivize certain types of customers from frequenting the business. Hourly rates at hotels and things like that. Cash only business was a big one for that particular city. But really, it's so variable. The massage parlors and the hookah lounges, very different. I think it's going to depend on the neighborhood environment, the kinds of law violations that you're seeing, if they're the only issue on that block or not. Putting up a fence is, fruitless if there's criminal activity happening all along that strip. So, that's why there is discretion, is so that the city can frame something that's going to work to actually deter the criminal behavior.
How do you, and I'm getting really into the thick of it here, how do you handle it with, say, we have some strip malls here where you have multiple units owned by multiple people, and the parking lot is not necessarily a shared community property. Like, in front of A is A's property, in front of B is B's property. That can get a little sticky if there's issues in, say, the parking lot, where maybe property B is really aggressive towards it. Property A is the problem, but people from property A keep going into property B. How do you deal with it when it's a lot of businesses in close proximity? Who do you level the issues against?
Well, first and foremost, you talk to the owner, because usually there's one owner and they own there may be a long lease. A lot of those leases are incredibly long for commercial properties and then they'll share rights to a parking lot. But you got to tell the owner of the property because they have a vested interest in that. And then honestly, I have not encountered a situation where you didn't know what property it was rising out of. Whether it was a massage parlor or a smoke shop, a hookah lounge, or whatever it is. Usually all the tenants know where the trouble's coming from because there's a certain type of individual hanging out in front of it or in it, or it's based on witness reports and it's based on actual arrests. So
Okay, I think that's the extent of my questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. Yes, Councilmember Arms.
This is a little bit different. We have, not far from us, we have a vacant house. It's been boarded up. I don't think they've ever figured out who owns it, who does what. What rights does the city have to tear it down, get rid of it, because it's a nuisance? I mean, it's right there, it's all boarded up. What right, I mean, we've waited for I don't know how long to get rid of it. And how long do we have to wait? What do we have to do?
those are called zombie properties, which is a name that I love, but it's a whole different issue, and they are a different kind of nuisance altogether, and they can be highly problematic if you've got property owners who are either deceased and there's no clear path to who actually owns it now, or if they live in a different country and they're non-responsive. That would require a different kind of code altogether, and perhaps a different workshop I can do a presentation on zombie properties, because that could take up quite a bit of time. It's very difficult is my short answer.
Thank you, because it's been there for a long time. And so It would be nice if the neighbors are getting tired of looking at it.
Yeah, it's a really difficult thing to do, to take someone's private property and to board it up or shut it down, or let alone demolish it. So
it's boarded up already, but now it would be nice to get rid of it.
Very hard to do. I'll work with staff.
Okay, thank you.
Come back to you with that one. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Arms. Anybody else? Councilmember Merrow?
Of course, I strongly favor the efforts to restrict the movement of constant nuisance violators, but I will remind the council and the hearers that there's that old game called whack-a-mole. And if you suppress or cause individuals that are problematic and lawless to not go somewhere else, then they're going, just not go one place, then they're going to go somewhere else. But I think this is a positive, constructive first step in moving forward for the benefit of businesses, of which all the city services depend upon and all the citizens depend upon. I did want to make mention, too, as a matter of public record, that, of course, this is not dealing with the cause. This is dealing with a symptom. And as the police chief has noted numerous times, there was a specific facility that was brought into a commercial area, and it's caused an increase in calls of a certain type, and it's diminished the business's profitability and really been adverse to the citizens to have a certain type of population. So as a matter of record, and I want to make sure that I state it correctly, that there needs to be punitive sanctions against drug dealers and those who are like that, so that it's possible to get them off the street. Until you can get them away from doing what they're doing, there's going to be a constant stream of marketing and addicts and all the associated decline, even blight, affecting the community. But that is a state level question, and because until the legislature and the judges and all the involved people understand that, and that means that the people, that is to say the citizens who are making 2 and 3 jobs to try to pay their bills, and they're law abiding and they love their community, and all the while they're paying $10, $20, $30, $40, and $50,000 a year or more to try to deal with these individuals who really are designing to destroy the town. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Merrow. Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. I just will say generally I'm in favor of this ordinance. I I believe in giving the police chief and our attorney and the mayor all the tools that they need to keep our community safe. And while we may be able to deal with people on an individual level, if we can also have the opportunity to deal with the property owner themselves, to take care of that issue, then I support that.
Thank you, Councilmember Marshall. I just want to add for the record, since all of you have had an opportunity to say something, that this was something that was very important to myself and the administration, because we feel like we're really frustrated in having worked through as many different avenues as we can possibly work through to see resolution in some areas where we're experiencing some problems in the community. And this gives us an opportunity to be more proactive and actually hold people accountable. So we're going to take a proactive approach now and see how that works for us and try to make a difference in the community, because we're hearing a lot of feedback that this is an area where it's a concern and they don't feel like we've been as proactive as we could be. So we're trying to be more proactive at this point. So Hillary, I thank you for all of your hard work on this. It's always a pleasure to work with you and see you and have you here. And thanks for all that you do for us.
Happy to help.
And thank you, Mayor and administration, for taking a position on this and moving forward.
All right, and with that, we're going to piggyback on this, and we're going to go with the police department and our new proposed ordinance. Oh, that wasn't probably very funny, and I just got it. New proposed ordinance number 2034, stay out of designated areas, so to order. And here to introduce that is our Chief of Police, Tony Slowick.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. So I'm happy to present to you today a proposed ordinance. It's the stay out of designated area court order ordinance. So it's SODA. So a little background is this presentation is in response to community and business requests to address an increase in illegal drug activity and related crimes in the southwest business district area of the city. The presentation's in consultation with the city attorney, the city prosecutor, the mayor, and myself. So what is a SODA order? A stay out of designated area court order is the creation of a new court order for the city of Oak Harbor under a municipal code. The SODA order is a restriction that prohibits a person with a drug-related criminal charge or conviction from entering a specific geographical zone. So some history about that SODA orders. The city of Everett created their first SODA district, and for some areas call it stay out of drug area, and some call it stay out of designated area, but they're all the same. So Everett was 2007. I think they now have 9 different zones. Marysville has had them since 2012, and they've upgraded to a couple zones. And then there's several cities in our area, specifically Northwest Washington, that's got SODA ordinances. So specifically, the city of Arlington and Monroe are 2 that our city prosecutor represent as well. So the overview is it defines a designated area boundary approved by city council, authorized district and superior courts to issue the order, establishes penalties for violations, which are typically under municipal code would be either a misdemeanor or a gross misdemeanor, and allows law enforcement verification and a review process, just like we do with any other type of court order. So courts issue the restriction, and the person is prohibited from entering the geographical area. The order can be modified to accommodate somebody from attending a meeting at a government location, like post office, CPS building, going and seeing your counselor or a doctor's office, so that those orders can be modified based off of what a judge decides. And then it's imposed as a condition of release, sentencing, or probation. And then any violations of the order are a separate criminal offense. So really, what are our goals? So we're trying to reduce repeat criminal behavior. We're trying to increase public safety and business safety, provide an enforceable tool for courts and the police, and encourage rehabilitation outside the target zone. So that's the area, the geographical area we're saying we want to restrict people in. So our legal framework is the RCW provides tools that allow city councils to create new orders. that the creation of this order provides an individual with the consistent due process rights that they would have with any other court order. And it's modeled after successful ordinances in other municipalities. So when we talk about the creation of geographical areas, really what we're looking at is the data that law enforcement have to say, this is why we would want to create a geographical boundary around a specific location. So this is an example. This is just around Southwest Barlow Street, and I had staff pull this data for the last couple years. So it's a 2-year look prior to 2000, like November of 2023, and then the 2 years post. So prior to that, on Southwest Barlow Street, we had 27 calls for service. The 2 years after 2023 to current, it's 419 calls for service. It's an increase of 1,452 calls in that area. So 151 of those incidents we've been able to confirm are drug activity for 151, and some of those are in a quarter-mile radius, and 57 incidents are specific to Southwest Barlow Street. Additionally, as we look in that quarter-mile radius, we know that between those 2 years, we had 29 CPR calls in that quarter-mile area. 55 were suspected overdoses in an immediate vicinity of Southwest Barlow, and 65% were suspected overdoses in that quarter-mile area. So this is some of that data that we would be pulling when we make a recommendation. Additionally, what could a geographical boundary look like? And I know it might be hard to see this screen, but this is our South Central Business District. This is really what that represents in our that red area. So we could be saying, hey, we would recommend that we create this geographical boundary in the South Central Business District, or you could even take, if you took SR 20 and divided southwest part of town and southeast part of town, you could say that Southwest Business District, south of Southwest 8th Avenue, but west of SR 20 all the way to Southwest Barlow Street. That would be an example as well. But it would be driven by the data that would be provided to you. So really, how does this work? So a subject is arrested or cited with a drug-related crime in the designated area. The officer and or prosecutor will make a request of the judge in the criminal case to impose a SOTA court order. The judge may then choose to impose the court order after hearing from both the prosecution and defense in the criminal case. And then if an order is put into place and an officer sees the individual in that geographical boundary, and confirms the order is active, they can make an arrest. That arrest can be a physical arrest where they take them in custody, or it could be one where they cite on scene and refer the charges to the courts. And I'm happy to take any questions and discuss this further. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. And with that, I will turn it over to council for questions or comments of Chief at this time. Councilmember Stuckey.
First is Hillary still, I mean, she's always listening, isn't she?
I'm here.
I just want to make sure I did not have any prior input on the boundaries of this. However, I do have a business on Southwest Barlow Street. Is there any reason why when this comes to a vote, I should not vote on it?
No, I don't see a conflict.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure and get that out there. I mean, if it was, like one street only, I'd probably feel differently, but I think it's broad enough where I'd be okay. So a couple questions. These questions, I kind of know the answers, but they were brought on by discussions with people, and so I'd rather hear it straight from you folks. One question that came up is this really necessary? We know drug use is happening. Why can't we just enforce the laws we already have?
Yeah, so this is another tool that we currently don't have. Often people may be contacted and they're arrested for say a warrant arrest. They're taken into custody and search incident to arrest. They have drug paraphernalia on them or they have drugs on them. This allows The city wanted to say, we don't want to have in these geographical boundaries, we're making this a safe area for our community, and we don't want to have this type of activity. So the city, either through the police department or the city prosecutor, can petition the judge to have this court order put in place. This then just creates another tool in managing, drug activity, distribution, selling, all of that.
Why not just do the whole city?
I don't think that that's I think that would be very challenging to have any judge say you're trespassed from an entire city. I think that's that. I think, two, this really is driven by data. So if the data doesn't show that it justifies a geographical boundary that we should put in place, then I wouldn't support doing that. And I think that you really want to look at what's the data showing for this, and to make that justification.
Is there a risk of this, especially when it comes to drug dealing, is there a risk of this just pushing people out of that area into places not in the soda district that may be safe now, but could can increase in activity?
Sure, this could distribute those individuals to different areas. We recognize that there's different reasons why people are brought into specific areas of town. Often it could be the open parking lot of a large box store that people feel like it's safe to deal drugs in because of the cover of other vehicles around, and maybe it's not suspicious. It could be other driving factors of a business being located there, or residents. So I think that this allows the courts to deal with those individuals that are repeat offenders and causing problems, or having issues in a specific area, drug-related issues, and really the hope is that it pushes them towards rehabilitation. So,
have you had a discussion with either local judges or our local prosecutor? Is this something that they would be willing to consider?
Yeah, so our local prosecutor actually has the city of Monroe and city of Arlington under contract. They actively do these orders in those locations. They have said that their court system has found that that they are a useful tool that they can leverage. People have the ability so individuals who maybe get a court soda order put against them have the ability to petition the court if they complete rehab or treatment or whatever to get those removed. They have the ability to have them modified through the court system. So it's a very fair process. For us, it has been mentioned, but not specifically talked about with our judges. So.
Assuming that these boundaries were adopted, can council modify those boundaries at a later date if, say, people get pushed out just outside of those boundaries now and start going to a different parking lot that's right outside of it?
Definitely.
If the data shows?
Yes. So the council has full control of modifying the geographical boundaries, creating new boundaries, whatever that would be.
So let's say someone's in that soda district and they get this order. Do the businesses down there learn of that order? Is there any photo of the individual or names? I mean, how would I know with a business down there that somebody was on there?
Yeah, so I have seen it a couple different ways in a few different cities. I see one city which actually posts a list of all the people who have an order that's been put in place by the judge. It's a public record at that point. So they just list that out on the geographical area on their city website. I've also seen it where they don't list out the names of the people, and then law enforcement knows, and that's within the police database to verify if that's in place or not.
Do you have a recommendation?
I would lean back on Hillary on what her recommendation is.
Does Hillary have a recommendation?
No, I don't.
Okay, to be continued on that one. And lastly, there is quite a bit of activity on that Barlow area. Officers, I can say you guys are there a lot and you do a good job of patrolling. Is there any talk of working with maybe some of those local businesses for the city to have cameras down there so that they can monitor some of that remotely, as opposed to, hey, here comes the police vehicle. Oh, let's hide our stuff. So,
Yeah, so we do work with businesses to find out who has cameras. We don't want to have viewing access of those cameras without permission. If that's what you're referring to, like us being able to live stream or whatnot.
either that or
those
install our
cameras.
own cameras on private property.
Yeah, and so I'll just say live streaming through other people's cameras is not something that that we want to do. I think there could be certain situations where somebody is watching their own camera and they send us the video, and then we take an action based off of that. But once we have that data, access to something, we have to start disclosing that data. That could create a public records retention thing, and I think you have to be very cautious about that. We have looked at grants to fund camera systems. So that is something that we're actively talking with Wendy about. There's not a lot out there. The ones we applied for last year we didn't get. So we're always looking at what different options could be.
And this would also, last question, this would have no impact on somebody doing a trespass order on their own property there. They're two totally separate issues.
That's correct. Yeah, this is a court order that the police department does not put this court order in place. This is a court order that we're giving a new tool to the court system to have. You're correct. A property owner can always do a trespass for their own property.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brian. I just want to add a comment too about the cameras. We need to be careful when we're looking at maybe potentially putting them in one area of the city, and then why would we be picking and choosing, and how would we justify to another area that we're not going to give to them like we did in one area? So we have to be very cognizant of that because it's very costly to do that. That's one of the things that came up in the discussion that we were looking at. So with that, Mayor Pro Tem had her hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is basically the ability of the city to trespass someone from a geographic area as opposed to a specific address, right? So if there's a repeat offender at Safeway, they can trespass that person, and if they show up at Safeway, they call the cops and say, the dude's here. But this just allows us to expand that boundary.
Yeah.
Is it basically the same?
Correct. It allows us to create a geographical area so boundaries around a part of the city that we can say we don't want this type of drug activity, and then when people violate that and they're arrested, we can then petition the court to put this type of court order in place to move them along or restrict them from being that geographical boundary.
And on that note, I know that it is I don't know if it's like a problem or an issue, but I know that it happens when someone has been trespassed from a location and they keep showing up to that location. So what do we do when someone is subject to a SOTA order and they just keep showing up?
Yeah, so first, just going back to an individual doing a trespass on a specific location requires that business to then pursue charges for the trespass.
Correct.
Often what happens is they want the person trespassed, but when they violate that written warning, they don't want them prosecuted. So now you don't have a victim in the crime for wanting them prosecuted. And that's a challenge with businesses where they at the moment of the trespass, that's what they feel comfortable with, but moving forward with criminal charges, they don't feel comfortable with. So that's always something that we're dealing with businesses. This is not a trespass order. This is a judge saying you're restricted from being in this location, and then a violation of this is an automatic arrest. So we would document that and then refer those charges or make that physical arrest depending on the situation.
Okay, and it would just escalate from there depending on
It would,
how
yeah.
compliant the
I would
person is.
expect if we had the ability to put somebody in custody until the next arraignment day or preliminary appearance day, I believe my officers probably would do that on this type of order to put them in front of the judge. Yeah.
And the order does specify prohibits a person with drug-related criminal charge or conviction from entering a geographical zone. So we're limiting this specifically to drug-related offenses? Is if someone has repeated theft accusations or assault or something like that, that none of that is subject to this?
That's correct. This is only for drug offenses. So, yeah, and that's what the RCW gives us that permission for.
Okay, are we including that language because that's our preference, or are we including that language because that's what the RCW limits us to?
Hillary, do you want to speak to that? If she's not available, I can. So it's what the RCW gives us,
Okay.
allows us to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. Anybody else? Councilmember Romero.
Thank you, Chief Sloak, for your professional, constructive, vigorous due diligence on this subject. And as with anything regarding law enforcement, it is a stepwise process to ramp up the pressure against those who are imposing illegal costs against our citizens and our businesses. And I think this will be a great step in the right direction, but I would view it only as an initial step. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Romero. Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, you mentioned that this is modeled after successful ordinances in other municipalities. Is there any data that suggests that we've seen in these other municipalities have seen an increase in treatment, a decrease in crime, based upon this? Or you'd mentioned the ability or the possibility that it could just push it out to other areas. So what have these other communities seen as a result of their sort of?
Yeah, so specifically the city of Everett they have 9 of these zones now because they've seen a success in the decrease in criminal activity around the business districts. Not only is it the drug activity, which is what the SOTA order is targeting, but it's those other violations that would go along with that, usually are follow along with those drug activity incidents, are reduced as well. The increase of public safety is another positive that they've seen, and often the people are moved along as in they decide to leave because the location that they wanted to go to that was within that geographical boundary that they no longer can go to is not accessible to them anymore. And then they move on to a different jurisdiction. So.
Okay. The boundary that you included in the map, that's just a proposed boundary, right? We would actually vote on the boundaries at a later date?
That's correct. I just wanted to show what that central business district was. I would bring back the data to show a specific boundary that we would look at. So.
Yeah, you had mentioned that the judge can allow them to go to the post office or other location government facilities. Mm-hmm. I just want to make sure, as you and I talked about yesterday, that we're not limiting access to pharmacies, because in that initial proposed one, I believe is all of our pharmacies in town currently, 3 of our 4 grocery stores, Walmart, and so they hate to dehumanize anybody and not allow them to have those services, right? I mean, drug addiction is that it's a disease, it's an addiction. They still need to be able to, though, go to the pharmacies and be able to shop. But as with the last ordinance, I'm in favor of any tools that we can provide our police department and the courts and to making our community safer. And so I appreciate the work on this and look forward to bringing it back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Marshall. So with respect to your comment about treatment, just so you guys are aware too, that the chief and I are actively working with the county and their Human Services Department, as well as Skagit County and North Star, to see if that will be a potential avenue for us to locate people there for either inpatient treatment or outpatient treatment. So that is something that we're looking to help counteract this, because I don't know how many of you are aware of this up here, but just in case you're not, I'll make you aware right now. Our money to combat this issue does not come to us directly. It goes to the county. the county has all of the resources that address this. So we're partnering with the county to try to allocate those funds elsewhere to be more effective in combating this issue. So, anything else for the good of the order? Yes. Did I say something wrong?
David Goldman, Deputy City Administrator.
Yes,
Finance
I know who
Director.
you are.
For the record, I'd just like to correct before, when we were talking about the pros plan, I looked it up, and the original source of funding was REIT 1 for the $80,000. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, if there's nothing, thank you, Chief, for your presentation. Again, Hillary, thank you. And we are adjourned.